We can talk about it later, but that was my question, and you don't want to answer it. 'Cause
No,
of
it's pending litigation,
Okay,
Senator.
but your views on this is not pending litigation. So I want to get to the independence of the Justice Department. At your nomination.
Right here is the moment everything breaks open. Klobuchar presses Bondi for a simple yes or no answer on raising the age to buy an assault weapon, a reform Bondi once defended in court, and Bondi absolutely will not touch it. Watch how quickly she slides from sympathy into stonewalling. This is where the temperature spikes. But before we get to that explosive exchange, we need to rewind and understand the pressure cooker leading up to it. Because this wasn't a routine hearing. This was a test of independence, honesty, and whether the Attorney General would stand on her own words or hide behind political shields. From the very first moments, you can feel Klobuchar setting the stage. Horrific violence in Minnesota. Families torn apart. Kids shot in a church pew. Elected officials murdered. And she isn't just invoking tragedy for emotion. She's building a foundation for a specific, narrow question. A policy Bondi herself supported in the past. A policy she defended. A policy she won in court, and still, Bondi refuses to engage. That contrast becomes the thread running through this entire hearing, a straightforward question colliding with a wall of political self-protection. Over and over, Bondi defaults to the same maneuver. Dismiss the question, pivot, congratulate her own agencies, blame the other party, or declare everything pending. Watch what happens here. You'll see Klobuchar start calm, measured, giving Bondi space to explain. But the longer Bondi dodges, the more tactical Klobuchar becomes. She seizes the momentum step by step and shifts from policy to independence, from public safety to political pressure. And once they enter the topic of Trump's Truth Social post naming Bondi directly and telling her who to prosecute, Bondi's guard goes from cautious to rigid. This isn't just about guns. It's about whether the Justice Department is operating on evidence or presidential demands. It's about transparency, about whether prosecutors can do their jobs without being fired for political convenience, about whether the Attorney General is actually in control or simply executing instructions. So let's break this down from the top. The tone, the pressure, the evasions, and the point where Bondi loses control of the conversation.
Recognized.
Thank you. Attorney General Bondi, good morning. I'm going to start on a different subject.
Good morning.
On behalf of families in my state. And I wanted to thank the FBI and the local justice officials in Minnesota, the U.S. Attorney's Office, for the work that they did catching the murder, in the horrific murder of my friend, Speaker Melissa Hortman, and her husband, and the shooting of Senator John Hoffman. Just last month, my state was again shaken to its core when a mass shooter attacked Annunciation Catholic Church in Minnesota, shooting through the stained glass windows, injuring 21 people, including 18 kids, killing little Fletcher, little Harper, an 8 and a 10-year-old, murdering them when they're in mass praying, 12-year-olds protecting 8-year-olds. I know we've spoken about these tragedies, and we both agree that this kind of violence, whether in Minnesota or at a Mormon church in Michigan or the assassination of Charlie Kirk, has no place in our politics or in our democracy. In 2018, after the Parkland shooting, you were Attorney General, and there was a bill called the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School Public Safety Act. And the bill banned bump stocks, enacted red flag laws, and raised the minimum age to purchase a firearm in Florida from 18 to 21. And you actually defended the law in court from a challenge from the NRA. And we know that I'm in favor of an assault weapon ban, period. I look at these bills and I think, does this hurt my Uncle Dick in the deer stand? We have a proud tradition of hunting in Minnesota. I don't think they do. But as I talked to Director Patel, and he told me in the chair you are sitting in right now, that assault weapon ban could prevent future attacks. I talked to him about better background checks, about red flag laws, and then that perhaps we could find common ground on what actually happened in Florida, which would be to at least change the minimum age for purchasing assault weapon, because We've got 18 to 20-year-olds commit gun homicides at over triple the rate of adults 21 years and over, even though that wouldn't helped in Annunciation Church because he was a few years older. She was a few years older. But as you know, the shooter at Parkland was 19 years old, and the shooters in Buffalo and Uvalde were both 18 years old. So given your efforts in Florida, do you agree that at least raising the age for purchasing assault weapons could reduce the number of these shootings?
Senator, first, that's pending litigation, and I can't discuss that at all. The 21 is pending litigation. I cannot discuss
In
that.
Florida?
But if I could go back
I really
the
didn't know
21
this.
age is pending litigation. I can't discuss that. But Senator, back to what you said about what happened in Minnesota, there is no place for that. And I believe I spoke to you after that. Horrific, those murders. And I'm so sorry that happened. And all of my federal agencies were partnering with state agencies, working hand in hand in Minnesota. What I can tell you about the Second Amendment is this is the most pro-Second Amendment DOJ in American history, as you know. But we want to keep guns, as you said, where they should be, in the hands of law-abiding American citizens, while keeping them out of the hands of criminals and gangs. Since January 20th, the ATF and FBI have seized more than
you gave these statistics.
30,000 illegal guns.
I have 10 minutes.
30,000,
You have
Senator
given these
Klobuchar.
statistics, and I truly appreciate those statistics. But what I was just trying to get at was something where maybe we could find common ground on a bill that you actually defended in court in a state, which Director Patel seemed open to, and that was looking at could we at least raise the age to 21 of the purchase of an assault weapon federally while states look at banning these weapons overall, given these little babies that this gun is used to kill. So,
All right, did you catch that? Because there's a lot happening in those first minutes that sets the trap Bondi walks straight into later. First, Klobuchar opens with tragedy, not in a sensational way, but in a personal one. She names victims, references families she personally knows, and situates the issue in real people's lives. That creates a moral weight Bondi cannot easily brush off. Then comes the pivot. Klobuchar highlights Bondi's own history defending Florida's gun reforms. Reforms Bondi now avoids discussing. It's a brilliant move. She isn't asking Bondi to embrace new ideology. She's asking her to defend something she's already defended. Something she won. This is where the pressure begins. Bondi immediately retreats behind the phrase pending litigation. Not once. Not twice. 3 times, and each time her tone tightens. You can feel her retreating from the substance, holding the line, refusing even theoretical agreement. And the contrast is sharp. Klobuchar is talking about kids murdered in pews. Bondi is talking about court gag orders that don't actually apply to expressing values. Watch the moment where Klobuchar tries one more time, trying to find even a sliver of common ground, and Bondi still refuses. That's where you see the shift. Bondi goes cold, mechanical. Klobuchar goes firm. Then Bondi tries to pivot into a prepared talking point, the Justice Department being the most pro, Second Amendment DOJ in American history. That line doesn't land. It feels rehearsed, out of sync with the seriousness of the tragedies Klobuchar just described. And Klobuchar clearly senses that. She cuts off the stats. She says, flatly, I have 10 minutes. That's not dismissal. That's control. That's momentum. At this point, Klobuchar stops chasing the policy answer and switches strategies entirely. She goes for independence. And the stakes jump instantly, because independence is where Bondi is most vulnerable. When Klobuchar brings up Bondi's nomination hearing, where Bondi pledged no political interference, pledged to follow facts and law, she's pulling Bondi's own words back into the spotlight. And Bondi knows exactly how tight that corner is. So what does Bondi do? She goes big. She declares she has absolutely upheld her commitment. She claims she ended weaponization and restored a one-tier system of justice. These are sweeping statements, and they crack under even basic scrutiny. because immediately after they're spoken, Klobuchar begins listing cases where the president publicly pressured Bondi to act, directing investigations, firing prosecutors, attacking officials, and within seconds, Bondi shuts down any discussion of conversations with the president. This is the pattern now fully exposed. On gun policy, deflection. On independence, evasion. On presidential pressure, refusal. And Klobuchar is ready for it. Her question about presidential instructions is sharp, direct, unavoidable. Bondi's non-answer stands out like a siren. Then, Klobuchar pulls out the Truth Social post, the president naming Bondi, telling her she can't delay any longer, instructing her to prosecute members of Congress, state officials, and James Comey. Bondi tries to brush this off as transparency. But you can see the tension. Her body language stiffens. And the way she responds, saying the president hasn't said anything he hasn't said for years, is not a defense. It's resignation. That's when the balance of power in the room shifts. From this moment forward, Bondi is reacting, not controlling. She's not driving the hearing. She's dodging it. Next, Klobuchar turns to firings in Virginia, prosecutors removed after criticizing right-wing commentary, despite not even being involved in the Comey case. Bondi stonewalls again. But this one hits differently, because firing a 20-year national security prosecutor looks political on its face. Then Bondi tries a new move, blaming Democrats for a government shutdown. But it's out of place, completely detached from Klobuchar's actual question. You can almost feel the gears grinding, like Bondi is throwing any talking point she has left. What comes next is the escalation point that forms the backbone of the second raw footage section. It's where the conversation turns from independence to a direct challenge. Who is actually leading the Justice Department? And who is overruling career officials?
But that was my question, and you don't want to answer it. 'Cause
No,
of-
it's pending litigation, Senator.
Okay, but your views on this is not pending litigation. So I want to get to the independence of the Justice Department. At your nomination hearing, I specifically asked you to provide assurance to every member of this committee that the Justice Department will only follow the facts and the law, and the White House will play no role in the cases investigated or brought. You stated in response, this was you, politics will not play a part in my decisions. And you also said the Justice Department must be independent and must act independently. Do you believe that you have upheld that commitment?
I absolutely have upheld that commitment, Senator. I pledged that I would end the weaponization also of the Justice Department, and that America would once again have a one-tier system of justice for all. And that is what we are doing in this country.
We saw this with the president directing an investigation prosecution of Chris Krebs, the former head of cybersecurity, Lisa Cook, who is a current governor of the Federal Reserve, Director Comey. And the president, and I know you have said that you will not discuss discussions you've had with the president about Comey. Is that correct? That you won't testify here about that? Because I was going to ask you if you received advice, instruction, or request from anyone at the White House to direct the department to engage in any investigations, prosecutorial actions, including decisions not to investigate or prosecute anyone.
I'm not going to discuss any
Okay.
conversations.
But then how about the Truth Social post on September 20th, 2025, in which the president said, "We can't delay any longer, Pam," using your name, "not bringing criminal charges, are killing our reputation," his words, "and credibility." And then goes on to tell you to prosecute a member of this committee, to prosecute the Attorney General of New York, and to prosecute James Comey. Do you consider that a directive to the Justice Department?
Senator Klobuchar, President Trump is the most transparent president in American history, and I don't think he said anything that he hasn't said for years.
Okay, it has been reported that you initially pushed back against requests by senior Trump administration officials to push out or fire the acting U.S. Attorney in Virginia, Eric Siebert, who's a conservative Republican, who made the decision that the evidence was not there to prosecute Comey. What made you change your opinion?
I am not going to discuss personnel decisions.
Okay? Is it true that the career prosecutors in the Eastern District of Virginia found that there was insufficient evidence to bring criminal charges against former Director Comey?
I am not going to discuss pending cases because Comey was indicted in the Eastern District of Virginia by, I may point out, one of the most liberal grand juries in the country.
Okay, let's go on to other firings or terminations. Last week, the Justice Department fired at least 2 senior attorneys in the Eastern District of Virginia, including the office's national security chief, Michael Benary. It is reported that his firing came following criticism from a right-wing social media commentator who wrote, "One can only assume he was part of the internal resistance in the Comey indictment." In fact, he did not work on the Comey case. Instead, he was working on pursuing justice for service members killed in Afghanistan. How does firing a 20-year national security prosecutor enhance public safety?
Senator Klobuchar, I'm not going to discuss personnel decisions, but the personnel issue that I'm having right now is that all of my agents, all of my lawyers are working. My agents are on the street working without a paycheck because your party voted to shut down the federal government.
Unfortunately, the House isn't even back here. They're 18 days off the job to even meet with us to come up with a resolution that we would like to discuss with them about saving people's health care. Let's move on to the Antitrust Division. Did you authorize your chief of staff to overrule top officials in the Antitrust Division to settle the challenge to the Hewlett-Packard Enterprises Juniper Networks merger?
Senator Gail Slater runs my antitrust unit, and she is doing an excellent job on many, many cases. As you know, that is a pending case.
Okay.
In any merger, just to clarify, in any merger, Senator, there is a deal struck with our office and with the corporations involved, but then that also goes to a court to certify in any merger. In any merger, it's a multi-step process.
Okay, I
and
will
that
ask some
process
further
is still pending,
questions
Senator
about
Klobuchar.
antitrust. I just had one other thing. DOJ can now take the extraordinary step of
Time's
subpoenaing
expired.
journalists. Has the Justice Department issued any subpoenas to journalists under the updated guidance?
Okay, that stretch, that's the heart of the confrontation. And it's where Bondi's position starts visibly slipping. Let's break down why each section matters. The turning point begins at 4:38 when Klobuchar says plainly you don't want to answer it, and Bondi confirms it's pending litigation. That's the first visible crack, Bondi admitting she simply won't answer. Not can't. Won't. Then Klobuchar reminds her, your views on this are not pending litigation. That line is crucial. It exposes the dodge. It punctures the shield. It tells the audience she's hiding behind process, not principle. From here, the hearing becomes a test of credibility. When Klobuchar raises the independence pledge, she's drawing a clean line. You promised one thing, but the evidence shows another. And the more Bondi insists she's upheld independence, the more Klobuchar rolls out examples suggesting the opposite. Investigations demanded by the president, senior officials pushed out, cases evaluated on political optics rather than evidence. Bondi's silence on conversations with the president isn't neutral. It's a choice. And a choice that raises its own questions. If the conversations helped her, she'd cite them. The refusal suggests they don't. Then comes the Truth Social moment. Easily one of the most damaging exchanges in the entire hearing. The president telling her, publicly, to prosecute specific individuals by name. That's the worst possible scenario for a DOJ supposedly committed to independence. Bondi responds by calling Trump the most transparent president in American history. But notice what she doesn't say. She doesn't say she ignored his request. She doesn't say the Post didn't influence her office. She doesn't say she reaffirmed independence. She doesn't even disagree with the premise. That absence speaks louder than her actual answer. Then, the firings in Virginia hit like an aftershock, because if Bondi wants the audience to believe the DOJ is functioning on evidence, not politics, firing a national security prosecutor who wasn't even connected to the Comey case, but was criticized by a right-wing commentator, is extremely hard to defend. Bondi's answer? I'm not going to discuss personnel decisions. That's not a defense. That's a shield. And when she tries to pivot by accusing Democrats of shutting down the government, the disconnect is obvious. Klobuchar didn't ask about budgets. She asked why a respected prosecutor working on Afghanistan cases was abruptly fired. This is the moment where viewers see Bondi losing control of the narrative. She tries to shift topics. She tries to blame Congress. But nothing actually responds to the substance, and Klobuchar doesn't let it slide. She keeps the pressure on. Antitrust interference, overruling career officials, whether Bondi allowed political staff to inject themselves into merger decisions. Each question sharpens the theme. Are decisions being made by experts or by political loyalists? Bondi calls the case pending, praises her staff, and avoids specifics. But by this point, the pattern is unmistakable. An attorney general unwilling to answer direct questions about presidential pressure, personnel firings, and political overrides. And then, the final moment, Klobuchar asks about subpoenas to journalists. Before Bondi can answer, time is up. And Klobuchar ends with a deadpan "have fun." That's not sarcasm. That's strategy. It's a punctuation mark, a way of signaling that Bondi spent nearly the entire hearing withholding answers, and everyone in the room knows it. So here's why this whole exchange matters. Because hearings aren't just about getting answers. They're about exposing who refuses to give them. And on that score, Klobuchar walked out with momentum, while Bondi left a trail of evasions, non-answers, and contradictions that speak for themselves. Every time Bondi avoided a question, the contrast sharpened. Every time she invoked pending litigation, the gap widened. And every time she dodged specifics about the president's pressure, the credibility of her independence shrank. The hearing didn't reveal a DOJ operating freely. It revealed an attorney general trapped between her past positions, her current political obligations, and a committee member who refused to let evasion slide. If you want more breakdowns like this where powerful people get pressed on the record, hit subscribe and drop your take in the comments. Who do you think came out stronger in this hearing? And what was the one moment that changed the whole exchange?